When I was young and carrying my first child, I thought marriage meant protection, love, and family. I was wrong. Instead of being cherished, I was treated like an enemy in my own home. My in-laws didn't just dislike me, they tried to destroy me. I still remember the night my mother-in-law stood over me, her eyes cold as stone, and said, "You don't belong here. You'll never be good enough for our son, or our grandchild." And when my father-in-law agreed, turning his back on me while I was pregnant, it felt like my whole world collapsed. But I didn't give up. Because what I did next shocked everyone in that family. Before I take you deeper into my story, let me ask, where are you listening from today? A small town like mine, or maybe a big city far away? Tell me in the comments, I'd love to know. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss what comes next. Because this story is only beginning. I was 23 then, carrying my first child, my heart swollen with hope. My husband, Mark, was kind but weak. He loved me, I know he did, but he could never stand up to his parents. They were powerful people in our town, wealthy, proud, and cold. They had never approved of me, the poor girl from a working-class family. To them, I was a stain on their perfect name. First, I thought time would soften them, that a grandchild would change their hearts. But the further my belly grew, the harder their words cut. Lazy, my mother-in-law would hiss when I struggled to carry laundry. Ungrateful, my father-in-law muttered if I dared to rest my swollen feet. And always the reminder, you don't deserve our son. One evening I prepared dinner, simple stew and bread. Mark was late from work and his parents sat at the table, glaring at me. The stew simmered, the bread cooled. My mother-in-law pushed her bowl away after one spoonful. "This is what you feed our son. Weak food, weak wife." My father-in-law's voice was harsher. "You think giving us a child will secure your place here? You're wrong. That baby is ours, not yours. Don't forget it." Their words struck me like blows. My hands trembled as I cleared the dishes, tears burning but not falling. I had promised myself never to let them see me cry. That night, when Mark finally came home, I tried to tell him. I told him how his parents treated me, how they chipped away at my spirit every day. He held my hands, his eyes full of guilt but his voice weak. "Please, Anna. They're set in their ways. Just endure it a little longer. For me. For him. Always for him." And so I endured. But inside me something hardened. Each cruel word, each icy glance, built a wall inside my heart. I began to realize that this wasn't just about pride or even about me. This was about control. They wanted to own me, to own my child, to erase my name and keep theirs shining untarnished. I lay awake at night, my hands resting on my belly, whispering to the little life inside me, "You will know love. Even if I have to fight everyone in this house, you will know love." And fight I would. Because I didn't yet know the full cruelty my in-laws were capable of. I didn't yet know the betrayal waiting just around the corner. But I was about to learn. And what I did next would change everything. Pregnancy is supposed to be a time of tenderness, soft voices, warm meals, gentle hands. But in that house, every day felt like a battle I was destined to lose. My belly grew heavier, my back ached, and yet there was no kindness waiting for me. My in-laws seemed to take pleasure in watching me struggle. One morning I tried to hang laundry in the yard. The sun was hot, my arms weak, but I forced myself to finish. My mother-in-law stood on the porch, her arms crossed. "You think suffering makes you noble?" she sneered. "You're nothing but a burden. If you weren't carrying our blood, you'd already be gone." Her words cut deeper than the heat of the sun. That night I told Mark again. "They want me out. Can't you see? They don't want me here." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Anna, I can't fight them. They've built everything I have. Without them we have nothing." The ache in my chest was sharper than any hunger. My husband's fear chained him to their cruelty. Days blurred into weeks. My father-in-law began locking the pantry, saying I ate too much. My mother-in-law rationed food like I was a servant, not a pregnant wife. Once when I asked for milk, she shoved the glass into my hand so hard it spilled. "Don't waste what isn't yours," she snapped. I drank anyway, tears mixing with the taste. But the moment I knew they truly meant to break me came late one evening. I was sitting in the living room sewing a small blanket for my baby. The thread slipped through my fingers, each stitch holding a piece of hope. My mother-in-law entered, snatched the fabric from my hands and held it up with disgust. "You think this child will belong to you? Well, this baby carries our name, our blood. When it's born, you'll hand it over. Do you understand? My voice shook. I'm its mother. Her eyes burned with contempt. You're nothing. Just the vessel. The words shattered something inside me. That night I held my belly, whispering through sobs, "You're mine. No one will take you from me. I will fight, I swear it." But their cruelty didn't stop at words. One morning I found my suitcase by the door. My father-in-law stood beside it. "You've been here long enough," he said coldly. "Mark can stay, but you don't belong." Mark stumbled into the room, his face pale. "Father, please, she's my wife, the mother of my child." "Then let her fend for herself," his father snapped. "If she truly deserves to be here, she'll prove it." I looked at Mark, my heart breaking. He didn't move. He didn't take my hand. He just stood there, frozen between his wife and his parents. And in that silence I understood. If I was going to survive, if I was going to protect my child, I couldn't wait for Mark to save me. I would have to save myself. That night I didn't sleep. I sat by the window, the blanket half finished in my lap, my belly rising and falling with each breath. I whispered to my unborn child, "They think they've beaten me. But they don't know me yet." Because the truth was, I was already making a plan. And what I would do next would shake their perfect world to its core. The morning they forced me out, the sky was heavy with gray clouds. Rain tapped against the windows as if the heavens themselves mourned for me. My suitcase was waiting at the door again. This time there was no pretense, no hesitation. My father-in-law's voice was sharp. "Take your things and go. This house is not yours." I looked to Mark, my husband, one last time. His face was pale, his hands trembling, but he said nothing. Not a single word. That silence hurt more than any insult. I walked out into the rain, clutching my belly with one hand and the handle of my suitcase with the other. The wind chilled my bones, but the ache inside me was worse. Behind me, the door shut with a slam. And just like that, I was homeless. I rented the smallest room I could afford above an old grocery store. The walls were cracked, the window drafty, and the mattress smelled of mildew. But it was mine. For the first time since my wedding, I felt a strange kind of freedom. I cooked my own meals. Simple bread, soup, boiled potatoes. No one rationed my food, no one insulted me at the table. At night, I stitched the tiny blanket again, this time with fierce determination. Each stitch was a vow. You will be loved. You will be mine. The pregnancy was hard. My body ached and loneliness pressed in like a second skin. Neighbors gossiped. I heard their whispers when I walked to the market. Her in-laws threw her out. She must have done something terrible. Poor child, born into scandal. I kept my head high, but every word stung. One evening, as I sat by the window, the landlady knocked. She was an older woman with kind eyes, Mrs. Harris. She placed a basket on my table, fresh bread, apples, a jar of milk. "You shouldn't go hungry," she said simply. "I lost a baby once. No woman should suffer alone." Her kindness broke me. I wept into her arms, and for the first time in months, I felt human again. The next morning I woke with a strange new fire in my chest. My in-laws thought they had beaten me, stripped me of everything. But they hadn't counted on one thing: my strength. I walked to the courthouse, my hands trembling but my head high. I asked to see the clerk about guardianship papers. If they wanted to take my child, I would fight them legally. I would write my name on every page of that law book until no one could erase it. The clerk looked at me with surprise, perhaps even pity. "Are you sure you want to do this?" "Yes," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Because that baby is mine. And no one will ever take it away from me." That night, as I lay in my tiny room, I pressed both hands to my belly. The baby kicked softly as if answering me. I smiled through tears. "We'll be all right. I'll make sure of it." Because though I had lost a home, a husband's support, and a family's acceptance, I had gained something stronger: resolve. And I would need it. Because the war with my in-laws was far from over. The papers I signed at the courthouse gave me courage, but also stirred a hornet's nest. Word traveled fast in our town. By the end of the week, my in-laws knew. It began with a knock at my shabby little door. When I opened it, a man in a gray suit stood there, briefcase in hand. "Mrs. Parker," he said smoothly, "I represent your husband's parents. They wish to discuss the custody of their grandchild." My stomach dropped. "The child isn't even born yet." "That may be true," he replied coldly, "but my clients feel you are unfit to raise it." They intend to pursue guardianship immediately after birth. I slammed the door in his face, my hands trembling. The baby kicked inside me as if sensing my fear. That night I wept into the blanket I had been sewing. The idea that they could take my baby, my only light in this darkness, felt like a death sentence. But grief soon hardened into fire. They think they can erase me, I whispered into the night. But I will not let them. The next days were relentless. Neighbors avoided me. Rumors spread like wildfire. She's unstable. She can't even keep a husband. That poor child is better off with its grandparents. I walked through the market with my head high, but inside I was breaking. One afternoon I saw Mark in town. My heart leapt. Maybe, just maybe, he'd come for me. But when I called his name, he turned with guilt written all over his face. Mark, I begged, tell me this isn't true. Tell me you won't let them take our baby. His eyes darted away. They just want what's best. What's best? I cried. Mark, I'm the mother. Do you hear yourself? How can you stand there and let them do this? He reached out as if to touch me, then pulled his hand back, shame burning his cheeks. I don't know what to do, he whispered. Then he walked away. And in that moment I realized I was alone. Truly, completely alone. But sometimes loneliness can give birth to strength. That evening Mrs. Harris, the kind landlady, sat me down with a cup of tea. I know they're kind, she said softly. Rich, proud, thinking the world belongs to them. But you have something they don't. I looked at her through tears. What? Heart, she said simply. And the law may not always be fair, but sometimes the truth can shine through if you fight hard enough. Her words lit a spark. The very next morning I went back to the courthouse demanding to see a legal aid officer. I poured out my story, the abuse, the insults, the threats. The officer, a tired man with kind eyes, listened carefully. Finally he said, if what you're saying is true and you can provide witnesses, the court will recognize your maternal rights. But you'll need evidence. Without it, their money and influence could crush you. I nodded, determination tightening my chest. Then I'll get it. Somehow. That night as I lay on the thin mattress, I whispered again to my child. They'll come for you. But they don't know me. They don't know how far a mother will go. The baby stirred, a small kick under my hand as if answering. And I swore, even if it meant tearing my soul apart, I would protect that life. Because the war had only just begun. The days that followed were heavy with fear, but also with determination. If my in-laws wanted a war in court, then I would arm myself with truth. The legal aid officer's words echoed in my head. Without witnesses, their money will crush you. So I began to knock on doors. First, I went to the house where I had once lived. The roses I had planted still bloomed along the fence, though I was no longer welcome there. At the gate, I saw Mrs. Carter, the housemaid who had worked for my in-laws for years. She froze when she saw me. Mrs. Carter, I said softly, you saw how they treated me. You know I was never given kindness. Her eyes darted nervously. I can't get involved, Anna. They pay me. If I speak, I'll lose everything. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Please. It's not just about me. It's about my child. For a moment her eyes softened. She looked around, then whispered, I'll think about it. And then she slipped back inside. It wasn't a yes. But it wasn't a no either. Next I went to the market. Old Mrs. Miller, who sold eggs, had seen me many times, carrying heavy bags while my belly grew, being scolded by my mother-in-law in public. When I asked her, she sighed. Everyone knows how they treated you, child. But knowing and saying are two different things. Still, she patted my hand gently. If the court asks, I won't lie. Her small kindness felt like a stone lifted from my chest. But the hardest moment came when I visited the church. Father Raymond had been to the house once when I fainted from exhaustion. He had seen my mother-in-law snap, she's just being dramatic, while refusing to call a doctor. When I asked him to testify, he frowned deeply. Anna, you know I try to stay out of family disputes. But, his eyes softened. What I witnessed that day troubled me. If I am called upon, I will speak the truth. I thanked him through tears. Piece by piece, the wall my in-laws had built around me began to crack. Still, nights were hard. I would sit in my little room, the blanket half finished in my lap, my belly rising and falling with each breath. Sometimes doubt whispered, what if no one stands with you? What if the court believes them? But then my baby would kick, reminding me why I fought. I would press my hands to my stomach and whisper, "You are my strength. And I will be yours." One evening, Mrs. Harris came upstairs with a folder in her hands. "I've kept the rent slips from the months you lived with them," she said. "They always made you pay even though it was their house. That's not normal, Anna. Maybe it will help." I hugged her tightly, gratitude flooding me. Even scraps of evidence mattered. Slowly, a picture was forming. A picture of cruelty, neglect, and control. My in-laws thought their wealth could silence the world. But they had underestimated the quiet power of small voices, of neighbors and bystanders who had seen too much to forget. That night, as I pinned the last piece of fabric onto the baby's blanket, I whispered, "They tried to erase me. But I will make sure your name, my child, is carried with pride, not shame." Because now I had more than pain. I had witnesses. I had evidence. And I had hope. Hope is a fragile thing. I had gathered scraps of it, a few kind words, a handful of promises, but it didn't take long for my in-laws to sense the shift. And when they did, they struck. It began with Mrs. Miller, the egg seller. When I passed her stall one morning, she wouldn't meet my eyes. Her hands shook as she arranged her baskets. "Mrs. Miller?" I asked gently. "Are you all right?" She leaned closer, whispering fast, "They came to me last night. Offered me money to stay quiet. And if I didn't, they said my son could lose his job at the factory." Her eyes filled with tears. "I have no choice, Anna. I can't risk my family." I squeezed her hand, my chest aching. "I understand." But inside, fury burned. They were silencing people one by one. The next blow came from Mrs. Carter, the maid. I found her behind the house, hanging laundry. "I can't talk to you anymore," she said quickly, glancing toward the window. "They know I hesitated. If I speak again, they'll ruin me." Her face was pale, her voice trembling. I wanted to beg her, but I saw the terror in her eyes. She was already beaten. At church, Father Raymond grew distant. His sermons were colder, his smile thin. When I approached him after service, he only shook his head. "Anna, I'm sorry. Pressure has been applied. If I speak, they'll close the parish's funding. I have too many souls to think of." I walked out with tears blurring my vision. One by one, the voices I had counted on were falling silent. That night, I sat in my little room, staring at the blanket in my lap. My stitches blurred as anger shook my hands. "They think they can buy everyone," I whispered bitterly. "But they don't know me. I cannot be bought. And I cannot be silenced." The following day, Mrs. Harris came upstairs again. Her expression was grim. "They sent someone here," she said, her voice low. "Offered to pay off all my debts if I evicted you. Said it would be safer for me." My heart clenched. "What did you say?" Her lips tightened. "I told them to go to hell." Tears welled in my eyes. "You don't know what that means, Mrs. Harris. They'll make you pay for it." "I'm an old woman," she said firmly. "I've lost enough in this life. I won't see them take everything from you too." I hugged her then, holding on as if she were the only anchor left in my storm. But I knew my in-laws wouldn't stop there. That evening as I walked home, a black car slowed beside me. The window rolled down just enough for a man's voice to slip out. "Drop your taste, Mrs. Parker. No one will stand with you. And if you love that child, you'll do as you're told." The car pulled away, leaving me trembling on the street. I reached my room and collapsed into a chair, clutching my belly. The baby kicked, alive, reminding me of why I fought. Through tears, I whispered, "They can scare the world into silence. But not me. Not us." The next morning, I returned to the courthouse. The clerk raised his brows when he saw me again. "They're trying to bury me," I told him. "But I'll keep coming back until someone listens. Even if I have to stand alone." His eyes softened. He leaned closer. "You're stronger than they think. And strength, Anna, sometimes attracts unexpected allies." I left with those words echoing in my heart. Because though my in-laws had money, power, and fear on their side, I still had something they didn't. The unbreakable love of a mother. And I would fight until my last breath. By the time autumn settled in, I felt as though the whole town had turned its back on me. Neighbors avoided my eyes, friends fell silent, and even the church no longer welcomed me. But sometimes hope comes from the unlikeliest place. It was late one afternoon when a knock echoed on my thin apartment door. I opened it cautiously and froze. Standing there was Evelyn Turner, my husband's cousin. We hadn't spoken much, She was younger than me, polished, and usually kept her distance. But now her face was pale, her eyes darting nervously. "Anna," she whispered, stepping inside quickly. "I don't have much time. They don't know I'm here." My heart pounded. "Why are you here?" She took a deep breath. "Because I can't watch what they're doing to you anymore." She pulled a folder from her purse, laying it on the table. Inside were papers. Copies of letters, financial ledgers, even notes scribbled in my father-in-law's own handwriting. "They've been planning this for months," Evelyn said softly. "The will, the custody, all of it. They never intended to let you raise that child." I stared at the documents, my hands trembling. "Why show me this? You'll ruin yourself if they find out." Her eyes welled with tears. "Because I know what it feels like to be crushed by them. Years ago they forced me into a marriage I didn't want. They don't care who they hurt as long as their name stays clean. But I can't let them destroy you too." For the first time in weeks, my chest filled with something other than despair. "Evelyn," I whispered, this could change everything." She nodded, gripping my hands. "But you must be careful. If they find out I helped you, they'll burn me too." I promised her I'd keep her secret. She left as quickly as she came, slipping back into the shadows of her powerful family. That night I spread the papers across my bed. Each page told the truth I had been screaming into silence. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't unfit. I was being hunted. I wept, not from sadness but from relief. For once I had something solid. Something undeniable. The baby kicked hard as though cheering me on. I pressed my hand to my belly, whispering, "We have a chance now. We're not alone anymore." The next morning I took the folder to the legal aid office. The clerk's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. "This," he murmured, "this is real evidence. Plans, signatures, their own words. If you present this in court, it will destroy their case." Hope flared in me like fire. But before I left, the clerk leaned closer, his voice low. "Be careful, Anna. Evidence like this makes enemies dangerous. They'll know someone betrayed them. And when they suspect, they'll strike harder." As I walked home, clutching the folder against my chest, I felt the weight of both hope and fear pressing down. At the corner, the black car appeared again, crawling slowly beside me. But this time I didn't look away. I stared straight at the tinted window and said aloud, "You can scare me, but you cannot erase me." The car sped off, but I stood tall, my baby shifting inside me like a heartbeat of courage. That night I told Mrs. Harris everything. She listened with her arms crossed, her eyes fierce. "You've got proof now," she said. "And a woman with proof is more dangerous than any man with money." Her words steadied me. Because for the first time since I was cast out, I wasn't just surviving. I was preparing to fight back. The week before the custody hearing, the air around me grew colder, heavier. It was as if every shadow carried eyes. I should have known they had discovered the betrayal. Powerful families always do. It began with Evelyn. She had promised to stay quiet, to slip back into the Turner household unnoticed. But one evening she appeared at my apartment door again, bruised, trembling. "They know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Your mother-in-law found the copies missing. They questioned everyone until they reached me. I told them nothing, Anna, but..." Her hand shook as she touched her swollen cheek. My heart clenched. I pulled her inside, wrapping her in my arms. "You shouldn't have come here. It's too dangerous." Tears spilled down her face. "I couldn't stay there. They'll never forgive me. But you must win, Anna. Promise me you'll use the papers. Promise me you won't let them destroy you like they destroyed me." I promised, though fear burned in my chest. 2 days later, I returned home from the market to find my room ransacked. Drawers overturned, the baby blanket shredded, and the folder gone. I collapsed to my knees, sobbing, clutching the torn fabric of the blanket. "They know," I whispered to the child inside me. "They're coming closer." But luck for once had been on my side. The night Evelyn had given me the folder, I had taken it to the legal aid officer. What they stole from my room were only copies I had made for myself. I wiped my tears, fury igniting in their place. They thought they had destroyed me, but the truth was already out of their reach. The intimidation only worsened. Anonymous letters appeared under my door. "Mothers can die in childbirth, you know." A brick smashed another window, shards glittering across my bed. Mrs. Harris begged me to stay somewhere else for safety, but I shook my head. "If I run now, they'll know they've won." Then came the cruelest blow. Mark. He arrived one night drunk, his face pale and desperate. Anna, he slurred, drop the case. Please. They're furious. They'll destroy you. I stared at him, my heart aching. They already have. Don't you see, Mark? You let them. His eyes filled with tears, but his words twisted like knives. If you loved me, you'd give them what they want. Just let them raise the child. You're too weak to fight them. I slapped him then, not out of anger but out of grief. Grief for the man who had once held my hand at the altar, now nothing but a puppet. Get out, I whispered. And don't come back unless you find the courage to be a husband and a father. After he stumbled away, I locked the door, pressing both hands against my belly. I won't give you up, I whispered fiercely. Even if it costs me everything. The baby shifted, a small kick against my palm. It felt like agreement. As the court date loomed, I knew the Turners would not stop. They had already tried to starve me, silence me, terrify me. Now they would try to break me completely. But I also knew something else. I wasn't the fragile girl who had walked into their mansion months ago, full of naive hope. I was a mother now. And mothers, when cornered, can be the most dangerous force of all. The courthouse smelled faintly of dust and old wood. My hands trembled as I held the worn folder against my chest. Every step toward that courtroom felt like walking into the lion's den. Jessica from the legal aid office walked beside me, her voice steady. Stay calm. Speak your truth. The judge will see it. I nodded, though my heart pounded so loudly I feared the whole room could hear it. When the doors opened, the Turners were already seated. My mother-in-law in her pearl necklace, lips pressed in a thin smile. My father-in-law beside her, posture rigid, eyes like ice. And Mark, my husband, sat with them. I had expected it, but the sight still cut me. The judge called the hearing to order. Their lawyer rose first, smooth and confident. Your Honor, my clients seek custody of their unborn grandchild. The mother, Anna Parker, has demonstrated instability, lack of financial support, and no suitable environment for a child. My mother-in-law nodded, her voice dripping with false sorrow. We only want what's best for the baby. Anna is incapable. Her words burned in me like fire. When it was my turn, I stood slowly, my knees weak but my voice strong. I may not be rich, I said, but I am the child's mother. And no amount of money can buy the love I will give. This baby is not a possession to be fought over. It is a life. My life. Murmurs rippled through the room. Then the lawyer for the Turners sneered. And where is your proof, Mrs. Parker? Do you have evidence of their so-called cruelty? I drew in a breath and handed the folder to the judge. These are letters, ledgers, notes in their own hand. Proof they planned to strip me of my child before it was even born. The judge's brow furrowed as he flipped through the pages. Gasps echoed when one line was read aloud. The child will be raised by us. The mother is irrelevant. The Turners' faces paled. My mother-in-law's mask cracked for the first time, her lips trembling. Their lawyer scrambled. Your Honor, these documents were stolen. But the judge cut him off. Silence. This court will not ignore written evidence. Then came the witnesses. To my shock, Mrs. Miller, the egg seller, stepped forward. Her voice shook, but she spoke. I saw how they treated her. I heard the insults. She carried bags twice her size while they mocked her. She deserves to keep her child. Tears welled in my eyes. One by one, others spoke, timid, frightened, but brave enough at last. Even Father Raymond, his hands shaking, admitted, I was there when she fainted. They refused to call for help. It was wrong. Every word felt like a stone laid on the scale of truth. Finally, the judge turned to Mark. Mr. Parker, do you stand with your parents or with your wife? The room held its breath. Mark's eyes darted between us. His parents stiff with fury, me trembling with hope. His lips parted, but no sound came. At last he muttered, I can't. The judge's face hardened. The gavel struck. This court recognizes Anna Parker as the rightful guardian of her child. Custody is denied to the grandparents. The words crashed over me like a wave. Relief, tears, trembling joy. I clutched my belly, whispering, we did it. But across the room, my mother-in-law's eyes locked on mine, filled not with defeat but with hatred. This isn't over, she hissed. And in my heart I knew she meant every word. The weeks after the trial passed in a blur. I still lived in the small room above the grocery store, But now I carried myself differently. For the first time in months, I felt like I had won a piece of my life back. The whispers in town didn't stop. Some still called me selfish, some pitied me. But I no longer bowed my head. I had my child. And that was enough. One stormy night the pains came. Sharp, relentless, tearing through me like fire. Mrs. Harris rushed me to the hospital in her old car, rain slashing against the windshield. Hours blurred into screams, sweat, and prayers. I gripped the sheets, whispering through every contraction, "Hold on, little one. Please hold on." And then at last a cry filled the room. A boy. Tiny, red-faced, fists clenched as if ready to fight the world that had already tried to erase him. They placed him in my arms and I wept. "You're here. You're safe. You're mine." But even in that moment of joy, shadows lingered. Because when I looked up I saw them. My in-laws standing at the edge of the ward, their expressions dark. Hospital staff blocked their path, reminding them of the court's decision. My mother-in-law's voice cut like glass. "You may have one today, Anna. But you won't always protect him." I clutched my son tighter, my tears falling onto his tiny forehead. "Over my dead body," I whispered. The first weeks of motherhood were a blur of exhaustion and wonder. Nights of no sleep, days of lullabies in my small room. Mrs. Harris often checked in, rocking him when my arms ached, humming old songs that soothed both of us. But the weight of being alone pressed on me. Mark never came. He had chosen his silence, his chains. Sometimes I caught myself staring at the door, wishing he would appear just once to see the child we had made together. But the door never opened. One evening, Evelyn slipped in quietly. She looked tired, her eyes still bruised by the wrath of her family. She held the baby gently, tears slipping down her cheeks. "He's perfect," she whispered. "Don't ever let them have him, Anna. He's your redemption." I promised her I wouldn't. Yet fate can be cruel. Weeks later I fell ill. The exhaustion, the hunger, the stress. My body broke under it all. Fever burned me, weakness dragged me down. I lay in bed, my baby crying beside me, and for the first time I wondered if my in-laws had been right. Was I too weak to raise him? But then Mrs. Harris lifted him into her arms, rocking him until he quieted, her voice fierce. "Don't you think that way, Anna? You've given him more love in weeks than they could in a lifetime." Her words stitched me back together. I recovered slowly. Life wasn't easy, but each day I watched my son grow stronger. His eyes bright, his tiny hands clutching mine. And each night, as the candle flickered, I whispered to him, "They tried to break me. They tried to erase you. But you are here. And as long as I breathe, you will know love." Years have passed since those days. My son is grown now, and sometimes he asks about the family we lost. I tell him the truth, not to make him hate, but so he understands the price of love, the cost of survival. And when I look at him, I know every tear, every scar, every lonely night was worth it. Because in the end, I may have lost a husband, a home, a family name, but I gained something greater. A son who is mine. Entirely mine. My story ends here. But I believe many of you have lived through your own moments of pain, injustice, or sacrifice. If you have ever seen a mother fight for her child, or if you've faced struggles yourself, share your thoughts in the comments. And please tell me, where are you listening from today? And if you want to stay with me for more tearful, powerful family stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe, hit like, and turn on the notification bell. That way you won't miss the next story that may touch your heart.